Excellent. Thank you for the patience. Chair, we are now live.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to thank you all for being here.
This is being recorded.
There we go. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first thing is our land acknowledgement. So the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. I'd like to call for roll now if people, I guess the order doesn't really matter, would like to introduce themselves. Does the order matter, Eric? My apologies.
The order does not matter. It's just there for a reference.
Very good. So maybe Carolyn, start with you. You're at the top of my screen anyway.
My name is Carlin O'Hanley. I am the vice chair. Would you like anything else? Any other introductions?
I think that's great.
Thanks.
Good enough for our purposes. Wei, you want to go?
Wei Mason,
Mr.
Councillor,
Mason? Yeah, sure.
7, Halifax South, downtown, present and accounted for, Mr. Chair, sir.
Mr. Kennedy?
Hi there, Ian Kennedy, newly inducted supervisor of major parks at Halifax Regional Municipality. New to the committee, so I guess I'll give a little introduction. I've been with Parks and Rec for 10 years, mostly on the workforce side as a member of QP 108, and it's my pleasure to move into a management position here at HRM and service the public better.
Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
And who is that Aaron? Is that correct? No. We have Natasha. Oh, Natasha and Sandra. Is that correct? The other two. Yeah. Natasha, how about you? To go next.
Hi, everyone. It's Natasha Warren attending from South and downtown.
Great. And Sandra.
I'm sorry for coming to this party late, but I was having computer problems, which happen from time to time. I'm a new member on your committee and very enthusiastic. I've sat on the HRM Heritage Advisory Committee and the Provincial Advisory Committee, so I'm really interested in this sort of thing.
Wonderful. Glad to have you. We have Chris Poole.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Chris Poole. I'm Superintendent of Parks Operations West.
Great. And it's I see A. Lavasi Wood. I'm not pulling a first name here. My apologies.
Smith. My name is Andrea Lavasi Wood, and I'm
there we go.
I'm with the clerk's office, and I'm just helping Eric produce the meeting today.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. And my name is Jake Dambergs. I live down by Point Pleasant Park in the south end of Halifax, and I'm the current chair, and I'm still very wet under the collar, so I appreciate your patience. We're missing 2 members anyway, Alex Smith and Brian McDonald, and their regrets. So our first order will be to approve the minutes. If anyone has read and noticed any errors or omissions, please let us know now. And as no one speaking up, I'd say I'm going to ask for a call to approve the minutes as presented. And this requires a mover and a seconder.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Wei. And a seconder?
Natasha, second.
Thank you, Natasha. So all in favor, say aye, and any contrary minded, please say nay.
Aye.
And I'll say aye, and I would say the motion carries as presented. So next, you're going to stop me if I mess anything up, Eric?
Yes, I will. I'm following along.
Great. Wonderful. Okay. So next, approval of the order of business for this meeting and approval of additions and deletions. And Are there any additions or deletions we should know about?
There are no additions or
Good.
deletions from the clerk's office.
Thank you. So do the committee members have any additions or deletions they'd like to add to this meeting? And I don't hear any, so we need a motion to approve the agenda as presented, and again require a mover and a seconder. Eric, am I allowed to move and second as chair, or
No,
technically should I not be?
yes, the second.
Thanks. So, right. So we'll call for, right, we need mover and seconder, and then we can
I
vote.
move.
Thank you, Carolyn. Right.
I'll second
And
that,
do we have a
Sandra.
seconder?
Sandra,
Thank you, Sandra.
you're welcome.
So will all in favor, please say aye, and all against say nay. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, wonderful. So I would say the motion carries. So business arising out of the minutes, none. So this, right. So this would be from last meeting's minutes. So call for declaration of conflicts or interests. If anyone has a conflict of interest for anything we may be discussing this meeting, now is the time to let us know. And if no one needs to, good, we can move on. There is no deferred business from last time. So we're on to item 7, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. And is there any correspondence for this meeting?
No correspondence was received by the clerk's office.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any petitions received by the clerk's office? Eric?
No petitions were received by the clerk's office.
Thank you. So we're on to the fun part. So this is about the art installation. The applicants are Kim Morgan and Matthew Reichertz. And they're here. Yeah, Eric? Are they? Oh, I see
Kim was
someone
able to
appearing.
make the
Hello.
meeting.
Perfect. Great. So you have 10 minutes to present. I certainly have looked over. So if anyone hasn't, we have the documents we can follow along.
Yeah.
I don't know. Thanks. Go right ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time this afternoon and your attention to this proposal that I'm very excited to present to you. This is being submitted by Matthew Reichertz and myself. We're both professors at NSCAD University, but unfortunately, Matthew was not here today. Matthew is also the chair of the Division of Fine Arts. So this is a proposal for a partnership for a class to be taught in winter of 2023, which would be public art installations in the park, to be co-taught by Matthew Reichertz and Kim Morgan, professors at NSCAD. And so I'll just give you a brief description of the course. The Fine Arts Division of NSCAD University will offer an upper level undergraduate course in winter 2023, which will involve creating public art installations in and for Point Pleasant Park. The project will be developed through a semester and would be very specific to the park. And so to address issues directly related to the park and or the local communities surrounding the park. The exact content and locations of the works will be decided through the site visits to the park and research and developed over a 4-month semester. So the course will be 4 months. And during these 4 months, the students will actually research, develop, and create the work. So how this will work is students will be required to write formal proposals from the very beginning of the semester, which will be screened by a committee. The committee will be made up of Matthew and myself and committee members, 2 representatives from Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee or to whomever the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Board thinks would be appropriate. Nothing will go forward without the approval and nothing will be developed without supervision of faculty. So proposed works can include, but are not limited to sculpture installations, interactive media installations, performance, earthworks, monuments, maybe ephemeral, maybe something online. Some of the works developed in the course will be realized on location. in situ, as we say, or some of the works will just be in a proposal format. Some, again, may just exist in a digital or augmented situation. So students will be responsible for sketches and installation plans. They'll be responsible for a budget, as well as safe installation and professional installation. They'll also be responsible for the upkeep for the work on site. Again, this will be vetted before anything goes into the park. So I'll just give you a quick background on a course like this. So I've been teaching public art at NASCAD since I arrived in 2008. Part of this has been, I've done projects at Point Pleasant Park. One was the landmarks course taught in 2017. One of the documents that I submitted are examples of some of the work that went into the parks for the landmarks course. I also have been teaching the airports project class. So if any of you have noticed some interesting art in the airport, that would have come from one of the classes. And actually some of those works have been bought by the airport, and they're still up many years later. I've also taught a speculative course when I first arrived, where students were speculatively thinking about what kind of art could change our relationship to Point Pleasant Park. Matthew Reichertz also works in public art, and he was the artist in residence. I think it's called the Gatekeeper's House. And also in my own practice, I work in public art. So the landmarks course was funded through the federal government. The airport class has been funded through private donors. And I'm very excited to say that, Eric, you can go to the next slide. Sorry about that. So I'm just giving you the details now. So I'm very excited to say that we have a patron, a previous board member of NASCAD University, who is going to donate money for student materials. So, and that individual will also be on the committee. So just to recap, there will be a jury. So the students aren't putting up anything that the park doesn't agree with, that the professors don't agree at. So, you know, the purpose of this class is to put relevant public art in the park, but also to give students the opportunity to develop a professional public artwork, going through the whole process from beginning to end. Okay, so I guess what I'd like to do is then show you some examples. Eric, if you could go to the next slide, please. So this was Isabel Fossey. This is the landmarks course in 2017, and this is a piece called Fortitude. And the details in the document I gave you with all the images, there's also the artist statements in there if you want more details. But this is a beautiful work that the artist has used a cut down tree as to form part of the work itself. So it's about the relationship that ballerinas have to strength and their body and the environment. Next slide, please. This is called Harbor Specimens by Alexandra Melakova. The artist has made these individual paintings as specimen slides, as though they were specimens or water samples. And we use the vitrine. So the students try to use what's existing in the park already. And so all the vitrines were used during this time. Next slide, please. This is a series of performances that Edith Hicks did around the park, around Halifax, where she created a very old anchor called Killikitch, and she performed this around the park. And then we made an online publication of the different performances. Next slide, please. And this is Lorraine Albert Steps Forward, Cape Breton Highlands Park. So this isn't in Point Pleasant Park, but it's a great example of another work that addresses park, the environment, and this is still up. This is actually was commissioned, now it's stayed. It's a permanent site-specific installation. Next slide, please. This is Philip Nuttall, Refraction, 2017, again, part of the landmarks course. And Philip put a series of these around the park that caught the light and would project these kind of rainbow prism that would change depending on where the lights came. It was a really lovely, lovely piece. Next slide, please. And this is Reef Ball. by Shireen Tavender. She created these out of clay and cement. She created these reef ball that she situated in the park for a short period of time. And it was something that she had experienced when she was in Australia, thinking about, you know, the climate change, the environment, and what that might do to our shorelines. Next slide, please. And this is David O'Shea's entrance. And David O'Shea was thinking about the people that came and landed on our coast. And he made this entrance way for them. And what he did, it didn't stay there, but what David did is he took this work down there, did a major photo shoot, and then created these photographs that went into a gallery space and online too. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Oh, one more, Philip Nuttall. And this is, Philip made these stone carving of pests that are in the city. So coyote or raccoon, and he used the vitrine because in art we use vitrines too. And he placed them in there, stone carving and using the facility of NSCAD. Next slide, please. And that's it. So those are examples. There's more slides on the document, the PDF that I gave you. And again, the artist statements are there for any information about the specific pieces.
Thank you, Kim. All right. So does anyone have questions? Yeah, go right ahead, Gary.
Thank you for this presentation, Kim. That was fantastic, informative, and you really, I don't have many questions, but I do have one. Our committee has been talking, and pardon me if I get the title wrong, but in regards to truth and reconciliation and considering what was there a plan, I believe Wei and Jake and Natasha, for consultation with the local Indigenous and Mi'kmaq communities for how we were going to move forward?
It was kind of left up in the air as we were talking to we spoke with the advisor, and as far as I know, there was going to be more communication between them and the Friendship Center, but there's another issue with the vitrines that we'll have to talk about later that also will weigh in on that, because as far as I know, they're being removed. But there should be a plan. Yes, there in the park plan there is. It's heavily involved.
Excellent. So the reason I bring that up was just to bring that to the table to see if with this project proposal, if there's, and with the 4-month course, if there's going to be any conversation about that and attention to. And that was it.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Good question. And so when the landmarks course was taught, I brought in not only Indigenous elder and an Indigenous artist, I also brought in a scientist and someone from African Nova Scotian community. So we brought in different people to talk about that site through their expertise. So, you know, with I'd be happy to work. Matthew and I would be happy to bring somebody in or have someone, you know, with the truth and reconciliation, land rights, the students. You know, it's a holistic approach to land, and that's how we teach it, and that's how we will do the research, whether or not and how it should be addressed. So, and then the students decide how they're going to do that and what the work is going to be about. But absolutely, if there's a committee or a specific person that is working with the park in terms of truth and reconciliation that you want us to contact, or like the process, I'm happy to talk about a process that can be put in place for that. Does that
Yes, thank you for
address that. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good and poignant and important part of the process that will happen at the beginning, as is bringing in a scientist, I think.
And I guess just to follow up on that, would there be priority for students from an Indigenous background for this project possibly?
They have to be full-time NASCAD students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's a degree granting. It's a course that's required as part of their, it fulfills their requirements for their degree. So students enroll in the class, and I don't know what the makeup of the class is until the class is closed. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
That's
You're
good.
welcome.
I have Natasha and Wei have their hands up. Natasha, you want to?
Yeah, hi, thanks for your presentation, Kim. Really, I wasn't privy to it last year. I didn't notice it in the park last year, but I look forward to it potentially this year or next year. So I think it's really nice to have a local college, and especially art college, connecting with our natural environment here. I just have kind of two questions, but sort of similar, both in that I'm thinking about how public interact with physical spatial art and sometimes make it experiential when it's not meant to be. So I'm thinking, do you have any thoughts on vandalism, and do you have any thoughts on safety, primarily like children perhaps interacting with some of those pieces?
Yes, safety is at the foremost of the is something that's discussed over and over again. And again, the proposals are vetted, so we will flag anything that seems that it's not safe, and we will make it safe or it wouldn't be made. Now, some pieces are made for children to play with. So it's on an individual basis, and each project has to be treated individually. And I don't know what the projects are until we get the students in the class. And they usually give we have them do two proposals. So, one might be like, we say, what would you absolutely love to do? And then what would be the second one if, plan A doesn't work, what would be plan B? Sometimes they have to go to a third proposal if both things don't seem realistic. And in terms of vandalism, students are told that there's always a possibility of vandalism with public art. That's just possible. I've had my own work vandalized, and sometimes the public interacts with it in a very creative way, and the piece becomes that. Sometimes they just take the work because they like the work so much. So this is part of public art, and that's also part of learning about how we can, what are your expectations and limitations and boundaries around the work. Yeah, but safety, that's not an exploration, that's just key to making the work.
Great, thank you so much, Kim.
Thanks, Natasha. Wei.
Thank you, Jake. Just on the diversity piece, I think the person, Kim, that you'd want to speak to that we can connect you with is Cheryl Kobe Jehu, who is the Indigenous advisor in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion here. And I also think an interesting piece for your students to look at is and the clerks can probably find a digital copy, the 2008 draft document that was heavily consulted on indigenizing and recognizing the Mi'kmaq history, especially the Northwest Arm side of the park, which had kind of went on a shelf and nobody did anything with. And my very first meeting with the folks from the Friendship Center in 2015, after I got elected, they were like, for 2013, they're like, here's the thing that hasn't been done. And we're working on trying to operationalize a lot of that next year. But I think that it provides a lot of context to the hidden history of the park.
That would be excellent. That's an excellent document for us to get our hands on near the beginning of the class, because some students might just take that whole thing on as a project.
That'd be great. So I'd ask the clerks to, if you don't have it, let me know, and we might have to scan a printed out photocopy or something horrible, but we have copies around.
So, and it's the 2008 draft documentation of indigenizing
the Point Pleasant Park. They did a collaborative project with the Mi'kmaq community and identified important sites and things that people would like to see. And it's kind of been sitting there unactioned, but it's now near the top of our list on our Truth and Reconciliation journey. So it's something that's been brought back to the service.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you hear that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a PDF. Kim, I'll make sure you get that too, because it is important. I'm pretty sure there's a PDF online. If you're searching for yourself, just look back in the minutes of these meetings, should be there.
Okay.
Sandra, did you have anything else? You're good to go. Sandra, you had a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just had a question. The proposal said projects would be responsive and site specific. So I just wondered what the responsive part would be. Would that mean interactive or what?
Responsive and site specific are art. It's art language. It means that it responds to that particular site. So site specific means it could not exist anywhere else in art, public art speak. It means that it would just be made for that space. It couldn't be anywhere else. Responsive means that it's made with that community in mind, but it could be translocated or transposed to some other site, but it started there. So these are just it's just another language. There's a whole bunch of things, and sometimes responsive could be interactive, where they might make something that actually interacts with the public, or it asks the public to interact with it. But then graffiti can be interactive too. So I mean, the students will explore various aspects of what it's like to work outside of the studio, outside of the university, and actually work with working with the site of the public of the park. So it's a really great experience, both for the students and for the public, I believe.
Well, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions lingering out there? Everyone's good. Kim, I had one quick thing to say, and that was, I read in the proposal, you guys had some sort of ideas of as an advisory committee within the advisory committee to be looking at things as with I think members of this board, maybe 2 members of the public. Do you guys have a formal idea of how that system might work?
So you cut out a little bit, but let me.
I'm sorry.
Asking about the makeup of the jury, of the committee.
Yeah, well, in the proposal it was written. You guys had an idea about a committee that could be filtering things on the way through, or maybe just overseeing, but that involved people other than just the NSCAD professors. And I was just wondering if you guys actually, was that just an idea you were throwing out there, if you have a formal system, something you worked under the previous years?
So in the previous years, if I was at the airport, if it was the landmark committee, I don't know who was in place actually. It was just before Chris. There was another individual that was at Point Pleasant Park that I ran all the proposals by. But for example, at the airport, there's 2 or 3 other people from the airport that come. Two other people. It was the CEO of communications, and somebody else from the airport would come out to NSCAD for an afternoon, and we would present all the proposals to them. So it's, we would ask that 2 individuals from your committee, or maybe whatever that makeup would be, or Chris Poole, like who's ever going to be on the ground with us, because there'll have to be a front person that I can contact and ask questions, or Matthew may have a question, and then somebody else representing Point Pleasant Park Committee, or if you wanted whomever you felt was appropriate, the committee, they would be asked to go through the proposals with us and come in the afternoon when the students pitch their project, so that they can ask the students directly what questions, as though we're doing this now, and then we would decide as a committee which one seemed appropriate for the park, or maybe some things need to be revised, and then they could go through.
Thank you. I'm very excited about this personally. I hope some of the rest of us are as well. I don't have any other questions. If anyone else is still lingering zero. Last standing, Eric, is a staff report. Is that right? Yes.
Okay.
We're getting the heavily remixed version of you right now. You may want to turn your video off.
Okay. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is not good. All right. Can you hear me now?
Thumbs up.
No? Is that clear? Yeah, better. Sorry, Kim, there is one other thing where, just so that you have it in your mind too, those kiosks, the vitrines may not be there when you guys are coming through. So just keep that in mind.
Yes, thank you. Chris had mentioned that. Yeah. And before I leave, may I just ask, what would be the time frame for the committee to decide whether or not they support this project?
I think we can tell you now, can't we? I'm not sure what the.
I believe the committee should make a recommendation to Halifax Community Council to consider the proposal, but as an advisory committee, it doesn't.
Could I say one more thing about the vitrines? Sorry to take up your time, but it's right there. And I just wanted to say this. You know, we have a wonderful institution with fantastic facilities. And before I found out that the vitrines were going to be taken down, we thought we'd fix the vitrines if the students wanted to use them. So, if they don't get taken down right away, we can look at rejuvenating the vitrines, let's put it that way. So
interesting.
It's a thought, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thanks
for your time.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
So should we check with the clerk? Would it be appropriate for a member of the committee to put a motion on the floor right now?
Hello, Councillor Mason. Yes, it would be appropriate, but as a reminder, as you already suggested, the motion would look something along the lines of the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee recommends that Halifax and West Community Council, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, so if you would like to think about a motion, I can help you with wording.
I will say, since we have some new people in the committee, I always encourage you all. I make motions all day long, but who cares what I think? We want to hear what you think, so someone else should make the motion. I'm just here to help.
I think this is excellent. I think we all agree that we'd like to make the motion. If anyone disagrees, please speak up. But I think this might be a great way to add some pizzazz to the park, as well as bridge a connection and create engagement.
Yeah, bring some new people in, eh? Yeah, that'd be great.
Just as a reminder for everybody, on presentations, the committee members are not allowed to discuss the matter that was presented, but you can ask each other questions of clarification or other staff members.
Okay. Sorry, repeat that one more time, Eric.
Sorry about that. Just that committee members are not allowed to discuss the presentation material. Yeah. So just make sure that you're asking each other questions. Yes. And just as a reminder, or just as best practice, I just looked into this previously, and a staff report was recommended by the Halifax and West solicitor.
Okay, this is for the last time they did this. Is that correct?
I did not. I was unaware that they have done this before, so I just forwarded them the proposal and all relevant information.
Okay. So our motion, I know what the beginning would be. I would say we support this proposal to move forward as discussed or as presented. Would that be so? The PPAC recommends that Halifax West Community Council recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct the CAO to. Are we there yet? Or are we just looking for a staff report?
Just as a reminder, Chair, a committee member would have to move the motion.
Oh, right.
That is a start there, and then we would be looking for a staff report. And the solicitor also mentioned some items of notoriety for consideration. So as you're partially through that, I drafted a motion here that I will send in the chat.
Thank you.
And if there's anything people would like to edit from the motion, that is purely your choice as the committee members.
Well, it's longer way.
This is way more official looking than mine.
Oh, there we go.
Someone move that.
Where staff work?
I move that motion.
So I realize everybody's new. It's I recommend that, and then you read through the entire motion, and then we get a seconder.
Okay. I recommend that the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee recommends that Halifax and West Community Council recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to prepare a staff report evaluating the proposed NASCAD student art installations in Point Pleasant Park with consideration of compliance with the Public Art Policy 2020-002-OP, permission from Parks Canada and insurance requirements. Do I have a seconder? Is that what I say?
There seem to be an awful lot of recommends in there. Is that a problem?
That's what I had in my notes too, unfortunately, Sandra. I think that is the protocol.
Is it?
Yeah, we're about 4 or 5 steps from the actual decisions here.
I stand inspected.
Yeah.
The way we put it in the past is that the committee provides babysitting advice to Halifax and West. The baby is the community, is the park.
Yeah.
So
we still need a seconder. We've got the.
Oh, I
the
second
motion
that.
has been made. Thank you, Ian. So that has passed. So
just a
Eric,
note for staff there. Staff cannot second the motion.
Oh,
they should be a committee member. No, that's okay, Ian.
Sandra or Natasha, perhaps.
I can second the motion, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, so can we are off this topic? Oh no, ayes or nays?
You have to
Yes.
vote.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So
you cut out.
Jake's teenage children have come home and are downloading stuff.
Aye, and anyone not in favor, please say nay. No, hearing that my internet connection.
I think you're caught up now. Oh, Jake, I think it's problematic. I was going to say Carlin should just take over chairing for the rest of the meeting, except if Jake is.
Yeah, maybe.
We don't have quorum.
Can you hear me? Can you hear? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. I'm back. Okay. Good.
Call the vote again, Mr. Chair.
Right. Call to vote. Precisely. So everyone in favor, please say aye, and anyone not in favor, please say nay. Aye.
Aye.
For all ayes, so the motion has passed. And we are now on to point 9, reports Point Pleasant Park operation update from Ian Kennedy.
Fair. It may help your internet connection if you exit the meeting and rejoin. If you'd like to give that a second and try that.
Am I cutting out still? Yes.
It's working better now for sure.
Yeah, I'm on a different internet connection, so hopefully this one will hold me up for the moment.
Perfect.
Are we ready to move to the operations update?
Yes.
Eric? No. Yes. Okay. So that is this reiterated, or are we just going to? Does Ian have anything to say? Yes.
Yeah, I can talk. So I've written up a memo. Sorry, I've written a memo of basically what's been going on in the park as an update since the previous memo. Outside of regular maintenance of litter, drainage, grass cutting, and removal of plant species and park benches. We have been short-staffed for the last season, which is unfortunate, but we've made the best of it. There's a lot of movement within HRM now of people hiring and moving on and so forth, but I won't get into that. Most of our efforts this season within the park has been focused on cutting trails back, especially the smaller walking trails, and heightening the canopy in certain areas. Removal of limbs of concern that are still existing from Hurricane Dorian. We've replaced a few guardrails in the park as well that have since rotten in the last year, 2 years, especially around Pine and areas more towards the shoreline. Moving into the fall, we're going to focus on road remediation, as we usually do with the rainy season. So we're focusing on fixing drainage and raising the roads to prepare them for the winter. Like I said, we've been short-staffed, and we also have to focus on other parks outside of Point Pleasant, with Point Pleasant being a priority, but we do our best. Things that have updated in my time here, I've only been in the position for just under 2 months, so I'm catching up myself. We've replaced locks on the lower washrooms next to the pumping station on Cable Road, which is a good thing because I know people have been locked in those washrooms multiple times over the last 3 years.
Wow.
So our in-house locksmith replaced those 2 weeks ago to a much more a lock that's easier to fix if a situation like that does arise, and that has less likelihood of wearing over time and causing someone to be locked in the washroom. We had a new culvert installed last week at the end of Prince of Wales near Black Rock Beach to help alleviate drainage issues we've had there along where Prince of Wales comes and meets Shore Road, which will help a lot in keeping the roads from washing out. We're hoping to see that. We have yet to see how it fares during uncalled for storms, but that's something we'll have to wait for. Currently, we're working on putting speed bumps in the lower parking lot, which Steve Rice had looked at previous. There's a lot of people who do a lot of speeding, and there's a lot of, I will say, car activity there at night, which results in both park property and people's vehicles getting damaged. So we've identified 4 areas within the parking lot that show the highest activity. We're hoping to have those in by the end of the fall. As well, there's a stretch of road in the lower parking lot that has caused a few issues in terms of from potholes and damage to public vehicles. So we're getting a stretch there paved as well. What else? Moving to the fall, we'll be starting phase 3 of the forestry thinning project, thinning out areas to increase their what am I trying to say? Yeah, to help the forest here as it recovers in the comprehensive plan. So we have to do thinning in areas that were highly decimated during Hurricane Juan. So we're going to be focusing on the area along the northwest arm, which is the 3rd area, which will complete the project, which hasn't been looked at since 2020 because of the pandemic and so forth. And other than that, I met with Krista Hogan, and the ball's getting rolling on the shoreline improvements. And they have a statement which they gave me to pass on, which is Regional Council approved funding for the design of Point Pleasant Park shoreline improvements. Staff are planning to issue a request for proposal for the design activities in 2022. Which they spoke to me, and there'll be a whole restructure of mostly to attempt alleviating the ongoing erosion of the shoreline along Shore Road, which anyone who frequents the park or has been in the park knows that it is receded heavily, especially after Hurricane Dorian. And we're hoping to put a stop to that. And involved in that will be some sort of remediation of the batteries on the shoreline, whether that's full removal.
Wonderful.
Yeah, they were saying it might be full removal, but it may even bring it down, deconstruct them down to a point where they are below knee height.
Fall on someone.
Yeah, so they don't pose a safety hazard structurally or for people climbing on it. I don't know if that would mean they would remove the fencing around them, possibly, but yeah, they may even use that in the plan to impede erosion, which they haven't fully finalized what they're going to do for that shoreline thing, but it involves both landscaping and I guess I'll say natural and technical methods of preventing erosion. I guess by natural, they may install mussel beds along the shore that stop, takes energy from the waves as they ebb and flow on the shore, stuff like that. So they're trying to figure that out because it involves a whole road remediation, and they need to make decisions on pretty big decisions that will in turn affect both stakeholders in the public and their access to the park. So they're currently at that stage. Outside of that, there's not much more to update. Business as usual, I guess.
Thanks, Ian.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions about what we've heard? My question got answered, and that was about the Point Pleasant batteries. Very happy to hear that news, and I know a resident that will also be happy to hear that news. Or email. Any questions?
I know those are not an easy solution because they have to involve archaeologists, indigenous community. They have to, there's more than. It'd be nice to see them gone, but there's so many within the comprehensive plan and just the status of the park. There's so many players and people that have to have a voice before it happens, but hopefully something.
Well, that's it. Safety is, as long as that's taken into consideration, I think any solution will work. So yeah, great. Thanks, Ian.
You're welcome.
I see one question from Natasha. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Ian. I have two questions, and they're of different matter. One is in the memo, it talks about some of the deficits experienced because of having fewer staff this season. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that stands out that in particular that was maybe delayed until next year. That's just question number 2 later.
I would guess maybe not so much that things were delayed. Things were definitely delayed in our operations outside of the park. Maybe more so the amount of focus and time we could give to ongoing work plans for 2022 was was lower due to the staff amount. So maybe, I wouldn't say things were put to the side. Maybe just had less focus than they could have had if we were to have a complement of full staff. Definitely there would have been more trail cutbacks or more level of trail cutbacks and repairs. Definitely more focus on road work. Now that moving into the fall and the vegetation here kind of starts to slow, we can focus on that. And we do have, in some ways, a much more stable staff now. But I wouldn't say things were, forgotten or not focused on more. Just didn't get their just due, I guess, is the best way I'll put it.
Thanks, Ian. My second question, I actually don't know if it's most appropriate for Ian or someone else, is that it's great that there's been approval for funding for an RFP, As a committee, we have not received much of information to date on this, like a presentation. So I feel like we should. And I guess I'm wondering, sort of my bigger question about what its purpose is like, is the purpose primarily erosion control and other aspects like safety? Yes, we've talked about, but is there other parts of the plan to that shoreline? Like very soon we're going to lose that anchor, for example, or would it be about park experience, or is it purely erosion control and preventing injury, for example?
I guess I can answer part of that because I met with Krista. They think they did said they will be getting a proposal to the committee. When I spoke to her, a large portion of it is about, I guess at the core, it's keeping the shoreline and then what they can do with that shoreline, because there's plans to replace the benches, and there's in what style will they go with this? Stick with the wooden benches? Will they go with the metal benches, and placement and so forth? Safety in the road and how the public will enjoy the shoreline. But at the core of it, they can do, I guess their perspective is they can do all of that, and they have plans to, give the shoreline a makeover from a public interaction perspective and safety. But, and they're taking into account the anchor as well, because there's specifics with that. But at the core, they can, I guess their perspective is they can do all that, but the shoreline is eroding almost a foot a year, to the point where if they don't, that has to be a part of it. Like it's all one big project, and it's not just erosion, but I think they need to solidify that so that if they do a big rework of the shoreline, that rework isn't then going to, I guess, wash away into the sea.
Yeah.
But yeah, it encompasses everything on the shoreline, from the road to even like how the public's going to interact with the shoreline and so forth, and vegetation and trees and so forth.
Thank you, Ian.
You satisfied? Thanks, Natasha. Wei, you have a question.
Oh, more of a comment. So after that big storm, which I think I had the picture up behind me in the last committee meeting, I walked through the park with a bunch of staff. And, to back up a little bit, this committee was presented about stabilizing the bank, but none of you were on the committee then. It must have been 6 or 7 years ago. Bigelow was still the park's capital manager. It was a long time ago. And so I did ask staff, I spoke to the clerks about this, to have Jeff Spares and those folks involved with this to come and present to the next committee meeting. And one of the biggest issues here is managing what is referred to in the climate change and resilience world as the retreat from the ocean, right? Like ultimately the water levels going up. There was that new stat that there's more water coming out of the Antarctic ice shelf than they originally thought, and it's going to go up another 30 centimeters in pretty short order, which in capital planning times is a generation. And so ultimately my view personally is we can't armor the bank and keep it the way it is now, because we'll lose. You always lose. You armor the bank and you damage the resilience of the bank, and the water will overtop it during a storm anyway. And then what have you got? So there's a lot of planning into where should we be pulling back and letting nature take its course. And if we do that, what happens to the road and the monuments like the Anchor and the Sailors Memorial, which is a Commonwealth grave, an international monument. So we'll hear more about that next meeting, but it's not an uncomplicated discussion to have.
Wei, I just want to ask you very quickly, I guess Ian and Wei, Ian quoted a foot a year, the shore's receding. Is that the entire shore, or is that just the area around Black Rock Beach where they've sort of created a cubby hole with the new pier?
I would say
I noticed that area seems to get washed out, but sorry, go ahead.
I wouldn't quote me on a foot a year. I would say that kind of a rough estimate.
Yeah,
but I've worked at the park. I worked at the park previously for 7 years, and I'm back now. And even in those 7 years that I worked here, like visual identifiers, there used to be fire pits on the shoreline when I started working here.
Yep.
And those are in the ocean now. Those.
Oh wow. Okay.
And just the most erosion is from Black Rock Beach onward, because the large rock that juts out from Black Rock Beach, plus the pier and remediation they did over a decade ago right by the parking lot. The beach does wash out, but the shore there is kind of stable. But once you pass Prince of Wales Drive, it's noticeable year after year. Yeah, especially within staff. Like staff here notices it, and like I said, the visual identifiers are gone.
Yeah, I want to build on that. The World War II bunkers that some folks are concerned about and some folks are not were built behind the kind of turn of the century bunkers or fortifications. And when I was a kid, you'd come over and there were stone rings that you could still see that the old guns used to be on, and they're all in the ocean.
Oh yeah.
And certainly when we were out there the day after the snow, the windstorm, it was just a gale. But you can see, and I'll see if I can find those photos. I think I shared them around with the committee, but I can maybe put them in a Dropbox and share them around again. It was nature saying, here's where your problems are going to be, because there was rocks pushed all the way over the road, all the way to the other side of Sailors Memorial Way in certain low-lying places.
Right.
There was a lot of water. There was debris from over Eastern Passageway or whatever that was on, not on the beach, like up on the grass. And I had I took one photo of one of the concrete bunkers, and it's sticking 2 feet out. It's just hanging out over the ocean now, right? So how do you stabilize that at this point when it's actually tidal inside the fort? So it's going faster than the fire pit piece has been something since the 70s that people have lamented, but now I think it's definitely accelerating. It's safe to say.
Right. Thanks, Wei. Anyone else have any questions for Ian? No. So there's no voting on this, correct, Eric? We can thank Ian and move on.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Thank you, Ian. So we're moving on to the next item that will be from Chris Poole regarding the discussion on the emergency phone and kiosk removal and or replacement. You can go ahead, Chris.
Yes, thank you. I just want to reiterate that, in the last meeting, we had agreed that the kiosks were good for removal, and we were going to replace each site. There were 5 of them in total with wayfinding maps. So I've since had a map developed. It's really hard to get every item that's in the park onto one map, but I think we've done a pretty good job, and I hope that everybody can see the the map that's attached to this meeting. The question that I have, and we may want to vote on it as a committee, around the emergency phones. From what I understand, there's only one emergency phone that's functioning out of the 5, and I would propose that they be removed along with the kiosks and not go back. I think that there's less of a need for those in the park at this point, with everybody with a phone in their pocket. So I just like some feedback from the committee on that proposal while the removals are being done, and the consideration to remove the emergency phones and have just the wayfinding map put in their place.
Does anyone have any thoughts? Anyone against that idea? Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Could you speak a little bit more about, is there anything more to the rationale about removing phones and not replacing them than other people having mobiles? Is there anything else for us to know there?
I don't think they're being used. Obviously they're not, because there's none of them except for one that's functioning. So it's, in my view, there's not a need to have them there anymore. And I think that the best course would be to have them removed. I think at the time they were put in, it was probably, you know, such a volume of people in the park and such a long distance from main arterials and roadways that the emergency phone would have been used if somebody had an incident or anything like that. And I think that the time for having a phone in there is long past.
Natasha, that satisfy you or satisfy your question?
Yes, satisfies my question. I don't know enough about to really comment on it, and I guess, you know, seeing the call history would be helpful from if it's Bell. I know that's the way of the world now, but sometimes I wonder if it's, especially in a public place like that, where it's easy maybe to get turned around or injured or something, that I just wonder if it's so smart to get rid of it. And I don't think we have to think back too far. Just 4 weeks ago, when all of Canada pretty much was shut down, anybody who was involved with Rogers, and right. some serious things happened to people that day. And so that's just what kind of comes to mind as like a potential consideration. So I don't have a strong opinion either way, but I do question like how far we move that along. Like it might be, I know you can't have them everywhere, but maybe at some of the highest frequented places or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
Eric,
mean, at this point,
maybe is that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say at this point, I don't know if they're repairable either. That's another thing that, you know, they may never work again, no matter what we do. We may have to run all new lines through that park if you wanted to have an emergency phone in there. So it's just something to consider where they're not being used, whether they're something that should be a priority at this point or not, I guess would be put to the committee.
Chris, just out of curiosity, how did you feel about Kim's suggestion that students might repair the kiosks or vitrines? That seemed like a feasible idea.
It would be a timing thing. I hope to have them gone and replaced before next year. So, you know, it's probably not an option to have them repaired. They'll likely be out of the park by then.
Okay. So maybe we'll try and steer her away from that idea. Thanks, Chris. Does anyone else have any questions for Chris? So Chris, you wanted some direction from us. Is that, should we, Eric, should we bring this to a vote somehow, or is this something we can make an off-the-cuff comment on?
Recommendations to staff, unlike motions, can just be talked about directly. Yes, there's no official matter for recommendations to staff.
Okay. Eric, Wade, do you know if there's any way to requisition old emergency call logs or dispatch logs to see if they have been used? Like, can we contact dispatch and say, do they keep records?
First thing is, where does it ring to, right? Because I remember this, and maybe Ian or Chris knows, but I remember it doesn't go to 911. It goes somewhere.
It goes to fire and emergency. Fire and emergency, I think. Kind of like a catch-all. It's not non-emergency.
So maybe the police not non-emergency. Okay.
It's not. Sorry. It's not non-emergency, but it's not a direct line to 911. The one that did work, the response was, they said fire and emergency. So it's, and I said, I'm just testing. And they're like, yeah, this is Point Pleasant Park down by they knew exactly where it was, but that was the only one that worked. But it was
So that
kind of-
means sorry, and the ones that's working is working into 902-490-5020, which is actually 911, but they only answer that when they're done the 911 calls. And that means they would have it logged. So that could be pulled, but again, it turns into one of those things where, you know, how often is it used is important, but also like the cost of the thing. It reminds me of several years ago, we were asked what we thought about removing the hydrants that didn't work. And it was like, you know, a couple $1,000,000 to fix them. This would be less, but it's still money, right?
Yeah.
So we could request that. We could ask the clerk to get that information.
No, I can. Natasha, are you satisfied at this point? Would you? Oh, great! I'm cutting out again. Are you happy to go on? Are you still?
Yeah, we could go on. I guess I don't hear anyone else having similar or parallel thoughts about it. I'm thinking from like a risk management point of view. Of course, that's what the phone is for, but just trying to not sort of carelessly project what it's like without having sort of data. Like, first of all, call history would be good. That'd be one thing. Yeah. So
I agree with you. And I'm thinking like risk as well as someone's phone dies, someone loses their phone and is in an emergency situation. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I guess I'd like to add, you know, we have lots of other parks that are similar, you know, size-wise. You take a park like Shuby Park, for example, where there's trails that lead, you know, for miles and miles with no emergency phones anywhere. So we just want to put it in perspective. Do we want to invest money into putting phones into the park at this point? Because that's essentially what we're looking at. There's nothing except for one that's functioning. So do you want phones in the park as a consideration, or do you want to leave it to the cell phones that are in the park already?
Yeah.
Can we?
Well, there's one other missing piece too, and this is something that I wanted to talk to in the last point today. So maybe if we can move past this one, even temporarily, and get on to the next issue, it might help alleviate concerns a bit. Does that make sense? I'm happy to recommend we try and find call logs as well. If that would satisfy you guys. Anyone have any thoughts? So, Chris, can we defer this till next meeting, and we'll try and get call logs and look at it again?
Yeah.
Would that be suitable?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly not going to be any call
November
logs.
3rd from the broken ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a feeling, I mean, just from my personal interactions with fire, which are, you know, every couple of weeks, they get very few fire calls, even though there are many fires in the park. So I would be willing to bet there would be 0 call logs in history, you know, within the last 5 years or so anyway. But I don't see any problem with trying to find them if they're out there either. Right. That is, no, I don't think it is known, is it? that's just an idea. So I don't know who would figure that out either. Eric, how would we find out what replacement costs would actually be? You'd have to put out a tender, I think. Or maybe Wei can speak to that if he's still listening.
Sorry, I missed the question.
How would we determine what replacement costs for the phone? Let's say we wanted to figure out how much it would be to fix them or to put something alternative in there. Would it need to go through council and then to a tender, or is there some sort of
they would ask? They would. I mean, the first thing they'd have to do would be you could, the minute it gets to spending money or directing staff are asking your advice. What I'm hearing is that the committee is hesitant without more information around costs and use. And so I think that's the direction to staff to take away. If it went farther than that, then potentially Halifax and West could be asked for direction, or staff could just find out, like someone's got to figure out how much it would cost to have Black and Mac or somebody like that come in and figure out, are the lines broken? Would you have to dig up the holes and put in new the poles and put in new conduit, that kind of stuff.
Or maybe wireless solutions nowadays.
Yeah. Like solar wireless solutions, emergency buttons like they have on Dalhousie campus now, the blue lights instead of these old historic phones. So that could be something that the committee could think about and be articulated on later. I think that's a really good point that Jake just made to staff, is like, yes, for love of God, we don't want to run wires. Great expense. I was thinking about a one-to-one replacement, and no, that doesn't make any sense. But like those are the kind of things the committee could recommend to Halifax and West, would be to look into what are best practices and what's appropriate. I don't know. I'll admit, like, part of what was distracting me is I was Googling to find out and it seems like the internet is unsurprisingly split on the issue.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, do you have enough information to hold you over for the moment then? And Eric, does that make sense? Can we get someone to try and dig into costs, give us a broad estimate perhaps, or what steps will be taken next?
I agree with Councillor Mason that would just be the general recommendation to staff. And it would be on staff to look into that for the committee. If we do want to defer this item, as in essentially bring it back to the next agenda, we will need to just have a quick motion. I can post that motion in the chat if you'd like to proceed with that.
Sure.
Yeah, just another thing I'd like to add. If the consideration is we can find out about call logs and usage, if there is any, and then also an estimate to either repair what's in place or put something else into place. I would just get some feedback from you on, should that delay putting in the new wayfinding maps, or can we go ahead with that and then figure out a phone, either a button or a new phone system down the road?
That sounds pretty logical to me. Yeah. Everyone's nodding, so I think that would fly, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we're on to, unless anyone has anything else on this one.
Sure, Jake, we just need that motion.
Yes, right, the motion. So if someone would like to bring that motion, that's in the chat, and we need a motioner and a seconder. And it can't be.
I will motion, seeing as I was most vocal.
Thank you, Natasha. And do we have a seconder?
I second.
Thank you very much. So I'll now ask you, Madam Vice Chair, if you would please take the chair so that I can step down and speak to my matter. And is that,
I
I think you
assume,
just
Chair.
need to, thank you. So my matter is broadly about bylaw enforcement and much more pointedly about need for park patrol. Ian, I don't know if anyone's been yelling in your ear about this yet, but you sound like you've been here a while. When Wayne and I grew up, there was someone who drove around in a truck, and their job was to catch the kids drinking in the park and, you know, doing whatever else we shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
That would be a great addition to the systems we have, a re-addition from my perspective. And just living next to the park and what I hear out my window, you know, joggers being chased by dogs, and, you know, sometimes there's the odd scream that makes me run into the park trying to figure out if, you know, it's a kid playing or, you know, something. It would be wonderful to have someone to call to say, you know, can you go check this out, rather than calling directly to 911 and saying there's a bonfire on the shore. So that's what I want, is park patrol. Very, very simply. I'm curious to hear if anyone else has thoughts, or if anyone else has reasons why they think park patrol would be an awful idea. So everyone seems to be in favor of, yeah. Park patrol is awesome. Way, is there any, your hand's up. Thank you. Please jump in. Absolutely, my friend.
There's another angle on this. So park patrol was gotten rid of kind of more formally around 2010-11, right before I first got elected. And it's kind of been, you know, a common thread for years was, why do we have all these separate forces or organizations or staffing issues? The police can just do it. And then you fast forward to 2022, and the answer is the police can't. They don't have time. And it's not appropriate to send $110,000 person armed with a gun to do everything from mental health to whatever. Right. So I would argue that not only did it maybe not totally make sense in the first place, but park patrol and all these other things is completely in line with retasking the police. Like having compliance officers or public safety officers on transit who are non-constabulary, and similarly in our parks, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, makes a lot of sense in a very global way. So it's I support
Takes
this.
pressure off police and the people. Great.
Yeah, well, we need them where we need them, and this ain't it. So I am happy to support this, and it's something I've been saying at council when we're having these debates. So I'm glad to see. Thank you, Jake, for bringing this to the committee.
And I appreciate you being behind this issue as well, Wei. So in terms of, should we make, again, a motion, simple motion to make a recommendation to council and keep doing it until they, until someone listens? Would that be the appropriate way to move forward on this one, Eric?
Just give me 2 minutes just to do a tiny bit of digging.
Sure.
I cut. Oop.
I think you should just talk, Natasha.
Yeah.
While Eric is searching for some information, to me, I feel like this conversation is a little bit connected to the one we just had about, you know, it's risk management and
totally
from an HRM perspective, it's negligence or not negligence, and so I think it's a little bit connected. It's sort of the greater conversation is risk management and all kinds of risk for that matter. So I'm sure there's a long history of why they're not there now. But as a user, I guess this is one reason we're on the committee. I have missed it for the last, like, I feel like the last time I really saw it was probably in the 90s. And I just think it's, and here's the other point I was going to make, is that this city is growing so fast, and there's population targets, and there's only so many green places for people to easily get to.
Yeah,
and where are they going to go? And so looking ahead 5, 7, 10 years, that park is going to have maximum use, and it's going to be uses that are not sanctioned. And so I kind of think something needs to be put in place. And I understand that there's other city parks, but it is unique in that it is, well, this and Shuby is closest to the most populated parts. So I think it needs to be looked at from a different lens and looked at from a future perspective. Like, that's where we're going. So we need to prepare for that. Like, how many city parks in Canada don't have patrol? Like, I don't know the answer to that, but I have a feeling, you know, Stanley Park has some sort of patrol. Look what happened to our small, beautiful public gardens, right? Like,
yes, right. I forgot about that one. I know, what a shame. My God. Yeah. That's a good point too, Natasha. How many? I'll actually do some digging on that one. See if I can find out how many other city parks in Canada have patrols, or how they deal with this issue. Maybe there's another genius idea we've yet to come across.
In the trail world, for example, volunteer trail committees, there are volunteers that do certain aspects of patrol. So there could be different models that could be looked at.
Yeah, the people that are doing the things they shouldn't be doing they're not people that I typically will confront anymore. I mean, even the people who let their dog just run in the woods and poop, they know what they're doing and they don't care, and they don't want you to tell them not to do it. So it needs to be someone with like a badge on or a shirt on, or, you know, some sort of professional, I don't know. I like the idea, but I've tried. Yes. Oh, sorry, I'm not chair right now.
Oh.
Madam Chair.
Hello, Chair. I'm just letting you know, I've just looked into our procedures, and because this is a motion that has come up during the meeting, we are unable to pass the motion currently. First, we would need a notice of motion. So to create a notice of motion, we will first need to add an item to the agenda called notice of motion, and then we can create the notice of motion. And then that will come up on the next meeting's agenda, and we can move forward with the motion there. I did notice that
essentially we're moving it to, it's new business today. We can't vote on it because it's brought up. We move it to old business for next meeting and then vote upon it? Is that what?
Essentially, yes. The reason for it is because it gives time for all the committee members to simmer on the thought, and also time for staff to prepare.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you.
And the one exception to that is with presentations, as we did today. So, Chair, we just need, there's no mover or seconder, we just need a vote to add an item, to add a notice of motion to the agenda. And we need full support from members for that.
Everyone in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
So we have 4. Anyone against, say aye.
Nay.
All in favor, none against. Thank you.
Perfect. And just so everyone is clear, the added item will be our next item. So if you would like to just move forward to item 10 and finish with this item, we can do that.
Let me just bring that up. I closed my screen accidentally. Sorry.
And Chair Dambergs, I assume you are planning to move this motion? And you can do that
Yes,
because you are not chair currently?
Because I'm not chair. Okay.
Okay, let me just prepare a quick motion.
Thank you.
If you have any ideas on the motion, please let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd like we feel based on safety concerns, we believe it would be prudent to reinstate a dedicated park patrol to what?
I think
to oversee safety, health and safety concerns.
You could just say park patrol and leave it at that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's it. They're not going to be saving anyone. They would be patrolling the park and then communicating what they see.
Right.
Sorry.
Perfect. And here is the motion is in the chat.
Great. So I will move that the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee recommends that Halifax and West Community Council recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to prepare a staff report evaluating the possible reinstating of a dedicated park patrol.
And just so you are aware,
we need a seconder.
We do not need a seconder for that because it's a notice of motion. Great. So we'll do the mover and seconder at our next meeting.
Great. Thank you, Eric. I think that Caroline, if you'd like to hand me back the chair, I
I'd like to chair back to Jake Dambergs, please.
And I accept. Thank you very much. So that's the end, unless anyone has anything else hanging on. We'll see you again on November 3rd.
Chair.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Yes. Pardon, yes. I've chatted a lot today. If you email out the PDF to the 2008 draft on the collaborative project, I'd love to receive that. Thanks.
Oh yeah, I'll make sure everyone. Yeah, I'll be on that, Eric. I'll make sure everyone gets a copy of.
Thank you.
A copy of that guy. And you had something for me, Eric, yet?
I was just reminding you to just go through the in-camera, then date, and then adjournment.
Oh, I'm sorry. This needs to be, the next meeting of the Point Pleasant Advisory Committee will be held on November 3rd, 2022, as set out in the committee's approved meeting schedule for 2022. Is that good? Call for a mover.
I so move, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra. And no seconder is required.
Natasha, second.
Are we good, Eric? Yeah, great.
Very good.
Thanks,
that
Natasha.
Was adjournment.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Eric. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Wei.
Hey,
thanks,
you
everyone.
Bye-bye.